Bună seara și bine ați venit. We want to welcome you to the celebration of the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the Romania Bucuresti Mission in 1993, which recently has been renamed to the Romania and Moldova Mission, for those of you who don't know that. So we're pleased to see so many of you here. We're excited for this occasion. My name is Brandon Jensen, and I'll be conducting. Elder Orton is presiding at the meeting, and we want to recognize on the stand here the former mission presidents of Romania, the only that were over Romania. The only one that's missing here, he was over the Austria-Vienna East Mission, which is Elder Neuenschwander. But President James and his wife Kathy Wild over here. President Wild was over the Hungary Budapest Mission, and was from 91 to 93 was over Romania. President John Mori, he was first president of the Romania Bucuresti Mission from 93 to 96. And then President Orton and his wife Joy served from 96 to 99. President Jarvis, where are you? There you are. President Jarvis and his wife Catherine from 1999 to 2000. President Hansen and his wife Sheila served from 2002 to 2005. President John Ashby and his wife Lenore over here at the end served from 2005 to 2008. And President Lundberg, Scott Lundberg and his wife Lori right behind me here. You may not be able to see him very well, but served from 2008 to 2011. And then of course there's President Hill, who's the current mission president. We're so excited to have them here. What a great occasion to have all these former mission presidents here, and all of you who love Romania and Moldova like we do. So also here, we want to recognize the members of the steering committee. Kim Woodbury, Kirsten Abel. You guys want to stand up and wave your hands? This wouldn't have happened without them. So we really appreciate them. Also, Seisha Fossen-Reyes and Anna Surin-Hickenlooper. I know Anna's here somewhere. Anna had put together the park event for us, so we really appreciate all the work she's done. And also the people who were on their committees that helped them out. Also thanks to Ryan Hadley and Nick Herman for the video and audio. Ryan runs a photography business, and he was kind enough to let us borrow his camera so we could videotape it. So we appreciate Ryan and Nick for being here. And then Natalie Hickman-Homer and Matt Nelson for organizing our musical numbers and musical pieces. And so we have a wonderful program planned tonight. We're looking forward also to the event tomorrow at Sugar House Park, a family event, where we will have opportunity just to hang out with each other, with families. And on the tables, you'll see the pavilion assignment. So make sure you take a look at that. It's also on the event page, on Facebook, as well as emails that were sent out. And also, if you have any questions, let me know. And then we remind you about the letter writing campaign. We put some posts out there. We encourage you to prayerfully consider those in Romania and Moldova, those in returned missionaries who may be less active, for opportunities to reach out to them and show your love for them and bring them to Jesus Christ. So in Romania and Moldova specifically, I know the missionaries are anxiously awaiting letters from you that they will hand deliver or try to hand deliver to those who you taught in country. Secondly, we want to take time to remind you to rummage through your old pictures. We're trying to put together a picture history of the mission. And so pictures should sort of depict growth of the church, missionary activity, and the details about doing that are on your program. Additionally, the church history department is interested in obtaining originals or copies of historic materials from returned missionaries and from Romanian members. So on your program is a list of sort of things they're looking for and how you can contact the church history department. But that would really be useful and needed to form part of church history. Lastly, we ask if you so desire to donate to the cost of this celebration. There's a few costs we've incurred along the way. and any help there would be much appreciated. And any excess funds we receive, if we receive excess funds, we're going to donate those to the General Missionary Department of the church. Finally, we want to open our meeting by singing the missionary hymn, Chemat să slujim. It's found on your program. Those of us that are old like me will realize the lyrics are a bit changed, so don't get scared, just sing along. And this is going to be accompanied by Neil Thornock on the organ, with Sarah Evershed van Oostendorp as the chorister. And after that, Cătălin Calancia from Bucharest will offer the invocation.
O, Dumnezeule Tată Etern, îți mulțumim și suntem recunoscători pentru această zi minunată. Să putem fi împreună aici și să putem să vorbim despre misiunea în România. Îți mulțumim, Tată Ceresc, pentru cei care au servit și care servesc în continuare în România și Moldova. Îți mulțumim pentru darul minunat care l-ai avut pentru aceste țări, ca Evanghelia ta să fie răspândită. Îți mulțumim și te rugăm, Tată Ceresc, să îi ajuți în continuare pe misionari și pe membri să fie tari și să aibă spiritul tău tot timpul. Te rugăm, Tată Ceresc, de asemenea, să ai grijă pentru cei care au condus departe și cei care vor să conducă în această seară. Să ai grijă de ei, să nu se întâmplă nimic, ca să ajungă cu bine acasă. Te rugăm de asemenea să ai grijă de cei care slujesc și Spiritul tău să fie cu noi. Te rugăm toate acestea, Tată Ceresc, în numele Fiului tău, Iisus Hristos. Amin. Amin.
Frați și surori, I remember the sunny day in July of 1993 when the Romania Bucuresti Mission was created. It was an exciting day, and I remember how we felt as missionaries to have our own mission in the country. The events today and tomorrow mark not only the beginnings of the mission, but also represent a milestone in the work of the Lord in establishing His church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Romania, and extending into the Republic of Moldova. When I think of Romania and the gospel, I can't help but hear the pleading of the Romanian national anthem. Deșteaptă-te, Române, din somnul cel de moarte. Awaken thee, Romanian, from the sleep of death. And another line, Acum ori niciodată, croiește-ți alta soartă. Now or never, craft yourself another destiny. This pleading in my mind is the Lord for the truth of the gospel and for the light of Jesus Christ. His work in Romania and its sister country, the Republic of Moldova, is this new destiny. Romania is dear to our hearts, and it is our hope that through remembering the fire of the testimony gained there and the people we love, the gospel will ignite in us a desire to follow Jesus Christ more devoutly, and will lift up the saints in Romania and Moldova and move the Lord's kingdom forward. By uniting the saints with our Romanian and Moldovan brothers and sisters, we can be a force in blessing the people in those countries as well as our own families. I'm personally so grateful for the opportunity that I had to serve in Romania and for the foundation that it is in my life. So I'm excited for the program we have tonight. First, we'll hear from Brother Chris Jessup. He was one of the first 4 proselyting missionaries to enter Romania. And he'll talk to us a little bit about some of the experiences in the early days of the mission and the church's infancy. Following Brother Jessup, we'll be treated to hear from a few remarks from Madalina Icleanu Sanders, whose family was one of the first families to join the church in Romania. And then after Sister Sanders, President John Mori, the first mission president of the Romania Bucuresti Mission, will speak to us. Following President Mori, we'll then have a musical number, I Need Thee Every Hour, sung by Natalie Hickman-Homer, Carson Homer, Stella Harwood Dobry, Michael Abraham, Lauren Collier, Malmeister, Martisa Welchel Spencer, Andrew Larson, and Peter Williams. And they are accompanied by Elizabeth Anderson on the piano and Matthew Nelson on the violin. We'll go to that point.
Wow. Ma'amir. My name is Christopher Jessup. I was among the first proselyting missionaries to serve in Romania. I will tell you a little about my experiences and about the first Romanian saints. In the Book of Mormon, King Mosiah taught, "Ye cannot dethrone an iniquitous king, save it be through much contention and the shedding of much blood." In December 1989, the Lord inspired the Romanian people to throw off the yoke of their oppressive government. Just as Mosiah said, the Romanians paid the price in blood for their newfound freedom. Almost immediately thereafter, on February 9th, 1990, Elder Russell M. Nelson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles stood in Parcul Cismigiu in Bucharest and dedicated Romania for the preaching of the gospel. In the dedicatory prayer, Elder Nelson promised that as the Romanian people accepted the gospel, their fields would be fruitful. I believe that that has come to pass. In September 1990, 8 humanitarian missionaries arrived in the country. Harold and Enid Davis, Alan Barber Price, Robert and Dorothy Fife, Beverly Cutler, and Virginia Bruce. A doctor, 2 nurses, a psychologist, and skilled educators. They worked in orphanages. They interacted with Romanian people. They gave meaningful service. The humanitarians demonstrated to the Romanian government that both they and the church were there to help and could be trusted. They held the first church meetings in English in a small apartment in Sector 5, where seating was so scarce that people had to sit on the edge of the bathtub in order to hear the talks and take the sacrament. The Lord said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, behold, there will I be in the midst of them." Even in those humble circumstances, they gathered in the name of the Lord, and they will tell you he was with them. On December 5th, 1990, The first 4 proselyting missionaries arrived in the country: Elders Ryan Osborne, Raymond Van Wagner, Dan Peterson, and myself. Elder Osborne, Elder Van Wagner, and I were transferred to Romania after serving for 8 months in Italy. Elder Peterson came straight from the MTC, where he had learned Serbo-Croatian, Saraku. In those days, Romania was part of the Austria-Viennese Mission, which at one time or another included all of the countries in Eastern Europe. Elder Peterson was originally called to serve in Yugoslavia. His call was changed after he arrived at the mission home in Vienna. He wishes he could be here tonight, and he sends his love. We met up with Elder Peterson in Vienna, where President Neuenschwander took us shopping to buy 5 pounds of rice and 5 pounds of spaghetti to take with us into the country. The implication was clear. There was not much to eat in Romania, at least not much that we wanted to eat. That turned out to be true, although I loved sarmale. Don't get me started on aspic. We landed at Otopeni Airport less than 1 year after the revolution. Compared to Italy, Romania seemed dark, cold, and gray. Bullet holes still riddled many of the buildings in downtown Bucharest. However, we quickly learned that behind the prefabricated concrete lived people who were warm, loving, and humble, who were ready to be taught the gospel. We struggled with the language. Our presence in the country was sponsored by a women's organization headed by Maria Muga. Maria, on our first day in the country, took it upon herself to teach us our first Romanian word, arici. For those of you who don't speak, it means hedgehog. That was helpful. A month later, we got language lessons, and we started to improve. Our mission president was 530 miles and 2 countries away. We saw him maybe once every 6 to 8 weeks. Under the gentle guidance of the humanitarian missionaries, President Neuenschwander entrusted us to seek the Spirit and to move the work forward. We felt the weight of our callings, and we prayed that we would be equal to them. The young elders, as we called ourselves, divided Bucharest, a city of 2 million people, in half. Elder Peterson and I took sectors 1, 2, and 3, and Elder Osborne and Van Wagner took sectors 4, 5, and 6. 1 million people per companionship. What could go wrong? Well, we were not allowed to wear our name tags. We were not allowed to tract, which was a huge blessing. We had no members. We had no meeting house. We started from scratch. After the humanitarians outgrew their apartment, for sacrament meeting, we met in a Mechanica Fina, or an engineering school, near Bucurobor in Sector 2. It was cold in that building. There was ice on the radiator that winter. After one sacrament meeting in February of 1991, B.G. Banu came up to me and said, "Elder Jessup, we must keep the windows closed so the people outside don't get cold." Later that same day, B.G. was renting an apartment to us, and he was inspecting it, and he turned on the water in the sink and said, "Elder Jessup, do you know what is colder than the cold water in Romania?" "No, what, B.G.?" "The hot water." As our language skills improved, we taught more and more, and the first Romanian saints stepped forward. Camelia Ionescu was the first Romanian to both accept and follow through with the commitment to be baptized. She sparkled, as did Doina Violaru, who was the second, and Octavian Vasilescu, who was the third. All 3 were baptized on March 24th, 1991, at 39 Stoica Ludescu. Out of respect for the priesthood, Octavian was first in the water, followed by Doina, and finally Cami. That night, we baptized the first branch president, the first Relief Society president, and the church translator. The Lord knew what he was doing. He poured out his Spirit at that baptism and at the baptisms that followed. At the baptism of Elena Stanciulete in April 1991, at least one person saw the literal fulfillment of the promise given to missionaries in Section 84 of the Doctrine and Covenants. "And whoso receiveth you, there I will be also, for I will go before your face. I will be on your right hand and on your left, and my Spirit shall be in your hearts, and mine angels round about you to bear you up." Though we were imperfect instruments, we saw the Lord's hand at work in gathering his children in Bucharest. Isaiah prophesied that the redeemed of the Lord would return and come with singing unto Zion. That prophecy was fulfilled in Romania. Cami translated "because I have been given much" in time for her baptism. Thereafter, except for Copil al Domnului, which is "I am a child of God," which was translated by Sister Violaru, Cami translated over 40 hymns. At one point, she translated 23 in the course of just over a week. Because of her efforts, the Romanian saints came to Zion with singing in their own language. Many Romanians gained testimonies of the Book of Mormon before they could read the entire book. All we had were the little selecții, some of which was poorly translated. But they read it, they believed it, and they were baptized and began to serve in the church. I cannot overstate the courage of those early Romanian saints. Familia Tieru, Costel Paraschivescu, Bigi și Doina Banu, Irina și Irina Constantinescu, Luminița, Ionuț și Adriana Fănaru, Maria și Alexandru Pop, Mihai Ipate, Daniel Verchi, Laura și Elena Boc, and many others were the pioneers of the church. Although they didn't pull hand carts across the plains, they experienced many of the same spiritual and emotional challenges that faced the early saints in the 1800s. But even more than the challenges that came with converting to a new religion, the Romanian saints had to exercise an additional amount of courage to stand up and be counted as people of faith in a country where for 40 years the objective was to keep your head down, to stay off of lists, and to blend in as much as possible. In April 1991, we received our first set of missionaries straight from the MTC, trained in the Romanian language, Elder Michael Crookston and Elder Dan Merkley. They were strong in the faith and prepared to serve. Elder Crookston didn't even mind eating aspic. Elder Merkley did. New missionaries trickled in every couple of months after that. In May 91, Romania was annexed into the Hungary Budapest Mission. Under President James Wilde, who taught us to hear the song of angry men, the music of a people who would not be slaves again. Elder Packer and Elder Oakes visited the country on September 9th. We were privileged to sit at their feet and to learn more about what it means to be a special witness of Christ. On October 3rd, we received our first proselyting sister, Sister LeSueur, who was transferred out of Italy to replace Sister Bruce. I wrote in my journal that day, she's a little wigged out. I knew the feeling exactly. My mission to Romania ended on February 18th, 1992, but not before we learned that the church was sending 12 missionaries to the country at one time. We had never received that many. We laughed until we cried. And then we went to scout apartments in Ploiești. President Nuanchwander once told us, "The Lord is the master of the unexpected and he expects the impossible." I saw that in Romania. When we arrived, we had no language skills, no members, no contacts. When I left, we were fluent. We had 70 members, many of them priesthood holders, one branch, and we were expanding into new cities. For 14 months, I was blessed to see the hand of the Lord begin to bring to pass the immortality and the eternal life of his children in Romania. It was and is his work and his glory. Whatever happened to the early saints, whether they remained active or fell away, it was because of their courage, their sacrifice, and their faith that we saw the church rise in Romania. How firm a foundation they laid for our faith. I was so blessed to serve in Romania. Eu știu că Dumnezeu și Fiul lui Iisus Hristos trăiesc. Sunt recunoscător pentru poporul român. Eu știu că cartea lui Mormon este adevărat și că Joseph Smith a fost un profet. Eu vă dau mărturie mea de asta în numele lui Iisus Hristos. Amin.
Amin.
Bună seara la toată lumea. My name is Madalina Icleano Sanders. I'm from Bucharest and now reside in Kirkland, Washington. I'm sealed to my dear husband, Shane Sanders. We are raising two precious souls in the covenant, Dacian, or Dacian, who is 7, and our daughter, Lavinia, who is 4. My mother is Consuela Iclano. This summer, she is celebrating 20 years of gospel heritage in Romania with the saints there. Her eternal companion, George, my dad, is here at the reunion. You'll get a chance to talk to him later tonight. They both also live in Kirkland, just down the street from us. My brother lives in Kentucky with his family, where he's working on a PhD in Spanish. I'm truly so honored to be here today, and it's so good to see many friends whom I've missed and long hoped to see once more. I am honored to have been asked to address you tonight. I will try to put into words in what ways the Romanian mission and the gospel affects lives. I will do so the very best way I know how, which is by relating my personal history of how the Icleano family came into the covenant. The Icleano family's first introduction to Mormonism came in 1974. My mom was working as a translator and interpreter at the Ana Aslan Institute of Gerontology in Bucharest. The institute had many foreigners visiting for treatment. Mom was translating for one such visitor, a United States legislator. The legislator and his wife asked my mother for a tour of Bucharest. She had a great time with him and his wife, but she also became close friends with their bodyguard, Bud Halterman. As a parting gift, Bud bravely shared with Mom a cherished possession, a Book of Mormon. During communism, religion in general was legally taboo and proselyting forbidden, so this was a bold act indeed. Mother read a little bit from the book, and although it seems a somewhat strange book with even stranger names, like Alma, Nephi, and Moroni, she felt it was an important book, and she kept it on display in her bookshelf. Years passed, but Mom's friendship with Bud, the bodyguard from Parowan, Utah, and his wife Betty endured. They became dear friends to our family. As children, Christy, my brother, and I would joyfully anticipate Christmas and Easter goodies from them. They would send us whistling grape lollipops, Bubblicious bubble gum, Mars bars, Trix Kit Kats, and lots of fun toys. I don't exaggerate when I say that the communist Romanian stores packaged and sold as treats America's wouldn't subject Guantanamo detainees to. Hard as heck stale bubblegum whose flavor would dissipate in 3 to 4 bites, orange rock candy, which we call cubanese, and the famous eugenias. So Bud and Betty's packages were pretty much equal to gold in me and my brother's eyes. In one of Bud and Betty's letters, they were overjoyed to tell us that someone from their church was coming to Romania as a missionary. They wrote that they would send a letter through him. Elder Fife, are you here? The letter took about 4 months to make its way to us. Elder Fife was a busy missionary. He served in different areas of Bucharest than where we lived. He has moved area to area, but never to Sector 2. We didn't get to meet him at the time, but he forwarded the letter to another missionary who is assigned to our area. On a crisp October day in 1992, close to my father's birthday, our doorbell rang. 2 dapper, handsome young men stood in the doorway. Elder Levitt, who was tall, with blonde with striking blue eyes, and Elder Peck, who was shorter than Elder Levitt, had black hair and kind brown eyes. They both dressed impeccably with white shirts, crisply pressed suit pants, and name tags clipped to their breast pockets. Their appearances impressed upon one the authority and seriousness of these young men that the callousness of their youth belied. They said that they were to deliver some letters from our friends in Parowan. We invited them in, but sadly they couldn't stay as they already had an appointment. They had to go at that time, but asked if they could return for a visit. My mom was baffled by these young, smartly dressed men. At the time when we thought of missionaries, we imagined older people, college-trained theologians, dressed in long black dress, or robes, or a tunic of some kind. Who could imagine boys taken to the streets of distant foreign lands, and of all things, preaching salvation through Christ, when their classmates were likely out and about, sowing wild oats? I remember so fondly our visits with them. Elder Peck was transferred soon after we met him, and we met the new missionary, Elder McFarland. I'll never forget the surprise on the missionaries' faces, and our own for that matter, when my mom pulled out from our bookshelf her own copy of the Book of Mormon. that Bud had given her all those many years ago. The missionaries couldn't believe it. They opened it up and looked at the publication date. This printing was older than they were. Also, Mom had an album with pictures sent by Bud and Betty at Lake Powell, Cedar City, and other familiar places to them. Eldest Levy was from Cedar City, and it seemed beyond coincidence to meet a family half a world away whose photo album included pictures of his quaint hometown in southern Utah. We had so many questions about their religion, and we kept asking them to return. What we didn't know until much later was that they were giving us the discussions. It just all seemed so natural, like a conversation among old friends. We read through the selections from the Book of Mormon, which was all that was translated at the time, and we were intrigued by the teachings in the book. Through prayer and personal revelations, having been impressed by the Spirit so strongly on many different occasions, we decided as a family to get baptized. Our first ordinance of the restored faith took place on November 29, 1992. The first place we attended church was at Mecanicafina, like Elder Jessup stated. It was near Bucurest Sector 2. This building was old and some of the windows were broken. Members wore their gloves and hats throughout the duration of church meetings. There was a thin, crunchy layer of ice that was formed at the top of each water cup as we partook the sacrament. I will never forget that. I still vividly remember on our first day Sorbiolaru's strong testimony of the truthfulness of the gospel and the joy she felt as she knew this was Christ's true church. The Spirit warmed our hearts and we were strengthened and soon forgot our frozen hands, paying little attention to our red beet-cold noses. We longed to return to that broken house of worship week after week, as Alma's followers did to the waters of Mormon. Our baptisms were performed in a rented villa where a baptismal font had been built in one of the rooms. The building was in Sector 1, was a small one-story house on Stoicaludesu Street. It was clean and comfortable. There, we were baptized on a cold November day. The room was full of people who welcomed us with open arms, and we joyfully embraced the new family. Later on, the branch was able to rent a villa on the Barbu de la Francia Street. The villa had more adequate rooms and even added the kitchen. In the villa, the fun began. There, we were taught principles of the church. We gathered together celebrating Romanian-style Christmases and Easters. The missionaries there introduced everyone to Halloween and created, perhaps, the first haunted house in Romania. We had so many fun parties for the youth. The church later leased Totrocen Villa and was an additional meeting house. There was where volunteering time began for the missionaries to teach free English lessons. In 2001, the first LDS chapels were built in Romania. By that time, I had left to BYU, but I still rejoiced with my parents as they were able to attend church in a new chapel. The floors were tiled, there were pretty wooden beams throughout the building, and the saints basked in natural light while they attended the good part, like Mary at the feet of the Lord. The building was huge with lots of rooms, now adequate for all classes. What a joy to have a chapel with our own name inscribed on it. It stands a beautiful two-story building with a steeple. What a long way we have come from that old high school building where we first met. At the beginning, the church had branches in Bucharest and Ploiești, but now we have branches in most of the major cities in Romania and some in Moldova. Many more branches and wards and even stakes are on their way as the work of the mission continues to progress. When we were baptized, we only had selections from the Book of Mormon, which was a very thin book, and a very sparse hymnal had been published. My dear mom happened to major in college in English translations, which was fortuitous if you only believe in chance, but serendipitous if anyone who had witnessed rolling forth of the stone cut without hands. And so Mom became one of the main translators of the entirety of the Book of Mormon. There were two review teams, a linguistic one and an ecclesiastical one. Brothers Vasilescu Kirila, sisters Gabi Frunza, Doina Biolaru, and Dina Cojocaru were all involved in making sure that the Romanian copy of the Book of Mormon was true to the original. And my apologies if I'm forgetting anyone who worked on it. There were many, many more people who assisted in various capacities, but I don't have all their names. Regardless, I'm thankful to anyone who worked on this important task. The translation began in 1994 and ended in about 2000. It took an additional 2 years before publication. This marvelous work brought about many blessings to our family and, of course, to all others who worked on it. It continues to bless the lives of those who read it. The Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl of Great Price, and a new complete hymnal are also now in print. And the translation of church materials into Romanian continues with conference talks and the publication of the Liahona magazine, as well as study guides and other materials. Lots of amazing humanitarian work was done by several missionary couples in the beginning of the church. They helped the Romanian people put on their first ever Special Olympics. They also helped in orphanages and children's hospitals, where they taught the nurses and social workers new principles of psychology and medicine for the disabled. They collaborated with the Red Cross in Romania and enriched the lives of people who, because of disability, were hidden from view within the old communist regime. With these first pioneer missionaries, members followed suit and started going on splits with the missionaries. They helped give discussions to new converts. Members also went to the orphanages and played and rocked those babies along with the missionaries. We visited the poor and the indigent and helped quite literally rebuild their homes, install windows and doors. Missionaries taught English to anyone interested, and I know there are and will continue to be lots of good deeds. Good things, real miracles have happened as a result of this beneficent church. Truly a godly church, God's church in Romania. Truly, missionary work is a wonder, and you young men and women were truly brave to come to Romania, and thus transforms our lives bit by bit. I say it is brave because it is an act of audacity to come to the cradle of Christianity for the past millennia and preach this upstart religion which is less than 200 years old, in a land whose church fathers trace their histories back to the home of the 12 apostles. I say that it is audacious, but such is truth. Truth flies in the face of folly, no matter how ancient or dearly held. I'm grateful beyond words for the mission presidents, who dedicated years of their lives at their own expense. They chose, rather than spending golden years with family and grandbabies, to follow the Spirit to Romania and Moldova, where they could apply their talents and special spirits to the coordination of a developing membership. I am grateful for remarkable missionaries who help strengthen us and other new members. I marvel at how you continue to write, call, and love even after returning home. I'm grateful for all the joy we shared celebrating, going on hikes, picnics, and in our first seminary Saturday classes. I am grateful and feel myself blessed to have been introduced to this gospel at such a young age. Just reflecting upon it, 13 is such a critical age in a child's life. It is the age of greatest transition, the dawning of adulthood, amidst the fading of childhood. I am so grateful for the friends I've made in the church. Each of my church friends has brought me great comfort and strength. They have taught me, less by persuasion and more by example, to make the hard but right choices, to trust in, and to keep the Lord's commandments. I do not know of another people that can say of this. I can say this of. I have kept in close contact with many of my Romanian high school classmates. I have witnessed the struggles and hurt they have gone through. How I wish I could give them this gift of covenant and blessings, and that they would in turn accept it. It is not the pale specter of death does not befall the Latter-day Saints, or that we are impervious to want, hardship, or need. But I feel like I know what is meant by Mosiah when he wrote, that I, the Lord God, do visit my people in their afflictions. And the Lord did strengthen them that they could bear up their burdens with ease. So much work went into raising the church in Romania, but it was a labor of love. We have come a long way, and I know it is because of all of us working together. But I also know and give witness that it is because this is Christ's church on earth, restored by the true prophet Joseph Smith. and led today by a true prophet, Thomas S. Monson. There is reason we recently assembled by a prophet and apostles of the Lord, and the importance of the missionary work reiterated, and instruction given as the crucial role we as members play in bringing forth the truth to all nations and people. Be not now ashamed to share your religion, that precious gem, with neighbors, friends, family, and acquaintances. Think of the love, kindness, and boldness of Bud nearly 40 years ago, when he handed his Book of Mormon to my mother in the height of communist Romania. You bear the light and the torch of God, of the gospel of happiness. It is a true happiness born of hard work, discipline, gratitude, obedience, precepts fundamental to the gospel. I ask you to honestly consider where else in this fast-paced, irreverent, narcissistic society of me can one find this? The world is sadly raising a generation ill-equipped for life in general. I've given just a small number of examples of how the many good deeds of our church members and the great things this church accomplishes in one small part of the world. Again, look no further than the fruit of your works to strengthen your testimonies. Look where we began, brothers and sisters. Elder Russell M. Nelson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles came to Romania soon after the Revolution and the fall of the great obscenity of communism. In February 1990, he dedicated our land for missionary work. In his dedicatory prayer in Cismigiu Park, he asked God, "Please hurry the day when missionaries and members will be able to unveil this glorious message to your sons and daughters of this divine nation." Swiftly thereafter, in the fall of 1990, the first 8 humanitarian missionaries and 4 full-time missionaries, 3 of whom came from Italy, Padova mission, just like Elder Jessup had mentioned earlier, were sent to Romania under Dennis Nichwander, who was the mission president of the Vienna, Austria mission. Some 20 years later, our church has grown a lot. First under President Wild, when Romania was part of the Hungarian mission. Later under the first Romanian mission president, President Mori, and has continued to grow under Presidents Orton, Jarvis, Hansen, Ashby, Lundberg, and now under President Hill. I wish to personally thank and applaud them all, even those I've not met yet. I believe in Christ. I'm so grateful for his atoning sacrifice. I'm so happy I was able to come here to share a little bit of my life and the beginning of our story of how we found this church and entered into his everlasting covenant. I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Brothers and sisters, it's certainly a pleasure for me to be with you today. It wasn't given that I would be until just a few days ago. And as a result, I'm sure that the organization committee had to make some changes on the program for me to be here. I recognize that, that I have a real weakness, and that is when someone asks me to talk about my experiences in Romania. Time goes out the window. And so I'm trying to control myself, and I give the committee the offer that if I go too long, they can pull the trap door. But I am told that there's a mattress below. I thought I would talk about 3 things tonight, very briefly. There are thousands of things that I could talk about. They're of a spiritual value to me and perhaps to you, but the time just does not allow. Let me go first to December 1992. We knew that we were going to be called as missionaries, and so we decided to bring our family together for Christmas prior to the calling that would take place the following July. And It was at that time that President Monson called and told me what the mission was going to be. Now he said, Brother Maury, do you know why we called you to Romania? And I said, the thought really has crossed my mind. And he said, well, it's because we couldn't find anybody who spoke Romanian. I don't understand the logic of that because I didn't speak Romanian either. And perhaps he might have made the same comment to President Morton, because there still wasn't somebody who spoke Romanian very well. Well, we arrived, Barbara and I, in Romania on the 1st of July, 1993. 4,218 sunrises, 7,218 sunsets have gone between. But the memories are still there, and they're so vivid. I want to make sure that the missionaries who served under me, and I'm sure missionaries who served after me and before me, were the best there were in the world. And I became very, very much attached to them and interested in their lives today, wherever they are. I thought I would talk about 3 specific things, perhaps things that you don't know about. The first has to do with Elder Nelson's visit to Romania and the dedication of Romania for the preaching of the gospel. When Barbara and I were in Salt Lake being set apart for this calling, Elder Oaks said, I want you to visit a friend of mine before you leave. That was arranged, and the friend was David Sam. David Sam was a federal court judge here in Salt Lake City. When we visited David Sam, he was very gracious. Spent an hour or so with us in his chambers. And he told us this story. He said, I've been asked by the President of the United States, along with other federal judges, to go to Romania and offer our help in allowing them to restructure their judicial system after the revolution. And there was a little announcement in the paper, and Elder Oaks picked up on it, called me and said, when you get back, I want to hear from you. Well, Brother Sam said to us, it was the most miserable trip I ever took in my life. He said all he did was to have parties, and all I could do was to over and over again tell them that I didn't participate in drinking alcohol particularly. So I came home, and then I didn't call Elder Oaks. But later I received a letter from him. And he read this letter to me with some emotion. He said, Elder Oaks gave praise to him and thanked him dearly for the efforts he had made in behalf of the church in Romania. And then Elder Oaks said made this statement. He said, when we went, we had a visit with the chief judge of Romania, who seemed to be a tough guy to work with, and handed him our card. He studied it for a few moments, and then said, David said, I know one of your people, and if you conduct yourselves the same way he conducted himself, you will be welcome here in Romania any day. And so that opened up from the high levels of government in Romania a chance for the church to come into Romania. When we arrived in Romania, we found that there were a number of members of the church scattered throughout Romania, most of whom had joined the church outside of Romania, but who, because they wanted to get asylum, were sent back after their baptism. They were scattered throughout the country. So we sent out missionaries 2 by 2 to find these members of the church. One such incident comes to my mind, has to do with a Romanian scientist who, with some of his associates, visited the United States in the 70s. He was a walnut specialist, and as a result, ended up on a church walnut farm in California. He was introduced to the church and joined the church while he was in the United States. But his associates immediately told his boss and others in their organization about him joining the church. And so when he went back to Romania, it was a tough life for him for years. When the missionaries found him, he broke down and wept, thinking that the church would never come to Romania. But then he went and got the tithing he had kept for many years to give to them. The third is an experience having to do with relatively new members of the church in Romania. We had the chance to send Romanians who were bilingual to Salt Lake to translate the temple ordinances into Romanian. And when that was accomplished, those ordinances were available in the temple, the Freeport Temple, the temple assigned to the Romanian people. We had several members of the church, 40 or so, who were ready to go to the temple, and so we proceeded to make those arrangements. Now, everything went fine. We found the money. We conducted the worthiness interviews. We made arrangements with the temple. We made reservations for the train. And then on the night before the train was to leave, we could not get the visa signed for the Romanian saints to go into Germany. And I said to my assistants, elders, it looks like we're going to have to cancel this. And it's going to be difficult. It's going to be expensive, and people will be very much disappointed. And then they said to me, President, let us try one more time. So I allowed that. They left. They came back about 4 hours later, and they had in their hands all of the signed visas for these people to go to the temple. Early the next morning, they left to have their ordinances performed in the Freeport Temple. A great experience for them. There are many things I could say, but I'm going to stop here by saying that after we served 3 years, Those missionaries who were so faithful made the church grow from some 140 or 50 people to over 600 people in 3 years. It was their dedication that did it. I'll always be grateful to them, and I will always have an interest in them wherever they are throughout the world. After 3 years, it was time for our release, and President and Sister Ordinance came to replace us on July the 1st, 1996. We came home, and we had several church callings that kept us busy for about 11 years. And then, suddenly my wife, Barbara, was diagnosed with cancer, a brain cancer that was fast-moving. She wasn't ready to give up, so we had her come down to Salt Lake for an operation. And while she was in the hospital, she received some flowers from her missionaries, and that was the greatest motivator for her of anything she had while she was in the hospital. She came home at will, and time took its course, and after about 3 months, she passed away. And while she was leaving, while she was leaving this realm and passing into the other, I held her hand, and I felt it go from warm to cold. And I thought to myself, what if the atonement had not taken place? I would not see my dear wife again. A wife of 57 years, 5 children, 25 grandchildren, and now 16 great-grandchildren. But the atonement of the Savior did take place. And so I have hope of eternal life. I hope that the Lord will bless all of you with just a few of the blessings that He has blessed us with throughout our lives, that you may also look for eternal life with your families. I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
Gracious Lord,
thanks to the choir for that beautiful musical number, and thanks to President Morey. I too miss Sister Morey and her smile and how she engaged with us missionaries. Chris and Madalena, I too remember the children of Katakafina and the snow on their heads during sacrament meeting. It's now our pleasure to hear from President Scott Lundberg. He's the most recently returned missionary from Romania and Moldova, and he will talk about the state of the mission and share some of his experiences. Following President Lundberg, we'll have the opportunity to hear from Elder Robert F. Orton. When President Orton's remarks are concluded, we will have a special presentation, video presentation by Elder Russell and Nelson, the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. As you may know, as was mentioned earlier, Elder Nelson dedicated Romania for the preaching of the gospel in February of 1990, and we're so grateful that he has prepared this video for us tonight, and we're excited to see what is in it. At the conclusion of the video presentation, we'll conclude our meeting by singing the mission anthem, Strângi Râul. So some of you younger missionaries may have to carry us older missionaries don't quite know the tune. So we expect you young guys to really sing out. And it is, I don't know if I've seen her yet, Rodika Berduji Jensen, is she here? Okay, there she is, okay. She's going to give she is from Romania, Moldova, and will give our benediction. We also just want to really thank everybody for being here tonight to make this celebration possible, and also the commemorative event that's happening tomorrow in Romania. Our idea was that we could have events simultaneously and share the spirit and the power that comes with the gospel. And again, we remind you of Sugar House Park tomorrow. And now, President Lundberg.
Bună seara tuturor! It's a special privilege for me to participate in this wonderful evening of celebration and commemoration, and I hope rededication on the part of all of us. I think I can speak for all of the former mission presidents in expressing my appreciation and our appreciation to our Heavenly Father for the opportunity we had to serve in a beautiful part of the world with many of you, to associate with members and the great people of Romania and Moldova. Grateful to you who served there, and grateful to those of you who may not have served there but have a love for that part of the world. We've had plenty of recognition, but I too would like to express appreciation to Brandon and Kirsten and Kim and the rest of the committee for organizing this wonderful event. As Brandon indicated, my charge is to share with you a little bit about the current state of the mission as best I can, and maybe a couple of experiences of my time in serving there. I want to let you know that as of December 31st, 2012, the mission records reflected a membership in Romania and Moldova of 3,092 members. Now, that was an increase of approximately 700 from the year before. And as you wonder how that could be, I can explain that President Hill asked Frankfurt to send back all of the records that had been, over the years, sent to Frankfurt of members that were thought to have been lost track of. And they now are embarking upon a process of having the branch presidents check all of those out to see if some of them in fact are not lost. And President Hill mentioned to me that they have in fact found some of them, and some of those have been, through the efforts of the missionaries and the members there, brought back into activity. And so great work is being done. I can share with you that there are 3 districts in the mission now. There is the Bucurest District, which is presided over by Vasile Doru. In Oradea, we have another district headquartered there. It's presided over by Florin Jambashu. And then there's another district in Chișinău, which is presided over by Valentin Viziti. The Bucharest District consists of the following branches: Alexandria, Brașov, and I should say there's a group in Feldioara that's operating underneath Brașov now. Craiova, Constanța, Galați, Mihai Bravo, Pandur, Pitești, and Ploiești. In the Oradea district, we have the branches of Arad, Cluj-Napoca, Deva, Oradea, and Timișoara. And in the Chisinau district, we have branches in Bolz and Chisinau and Orhei. In addition, there's a mission district that covers the other 3 branches in Iași and Bacău and Sibiu. Currently, there are 11 missionaries serving in various places from Romania and the Republic of Moldova, with 3 more awaiting who have received their calls, who will begin service in the next couple of months. I should mention one of those who's waiting to begin her service again is Sister Chioban from Cluj-Napoca. This will be her 4th mission. A faithful sister. I don't have precise records for the last couple of years, but I'm pretty confident that in the time since the mission was created in 1993 through today, there have been over 140 missionaries from Romania and over 35 from the Republic of Moldova who have served or are serving full-time missions. In response to my request to President Hill for news in the mission, he told me 4 things that I'm passing along to you. First, that they recently received approval for an additional 18 sister missionaries to be added to the complement of the mission. So they now have an approved complement of 64 Romanian-speaking elders, 40 Romanian-speaking sisters, 10 Russian-speaking elders, and 13 couples. If any of you are interested, they've only got 9 couples there, and I know President Hill would love to have 4 more. A little recruitment here. The next thing he mentioned was that the mission has been divided for purposes of the temple district assignment. The Oradea district is assigned to the Freiburg temple, and the remainder of the mission is assigned to the Kiev temple district. In 2012, the mission was blessed to have 2 senior missionaries who were patriarchs, and they received permission from President Packard to provide patriarchal blessings, and during that year over 90 patriarchal blessings were provided to members who were qualified to receive those. Lastly, President Hill mentioned that ongoing are negotiations with the Romanian National Archives for a contract which would allow Family Search to image and digitize the family history records in Romania. He says the negotiations are progressing slowly, but they are moving forward, and I would just ask all of you to add your prayers and your faith to those who are making those efforts. It would be such a great blessing to the people in Romania and many other places in the world, from people who have left that country to go other places, if those records could be made available. So let me just then share, that's kind of the state of the mission right now. Let me share a couple of experiences with you of the time that Sister Lundberg and I and our young son Joshua, who was with us, were able to serve in Romania and the Republic of Moldova. Let me speak first about Moldova. When we first arrived there, I made my first trip to Moldova to visit Elder Kozlenko. We couldn't get him into Romania, so we had to go to Moldova to interview him. And that's another story that I'll pass on. But my impression was strong that we needed to get Russian language missionaries to be able to expand the work in Moldova. And so for the next almost year, we had an effort to accomplish that. And finally, after about a year's effort, with the help of the Europe and the Europe East area presidencies and the missionary department of the church, we were able to obtain permission or authorization to add 10 Russian-speaking elders to the complement for the mission. Well, having done that, the next challenge we faced was the Moldovan visa restrictions, because the missionaries were only allowed to have a visa for a 90-day stay, and that was fine for Romanian-speaking elders and sisters, because we could just simply bring them back into Romania, and if we wanted to, we could move them back over. But for the Russian-speaking elders, that wasn't possible. So we worked out a rotation system in cooperation with President Steinagel, the president of the Ukraine Kiev mission, where we would have elders, Russian-speaking elders, serve in Moldova for 2 transfers, and then go over into the Ukraine Kiev mission to serve 2 transfers plus a couple of days, because they had to be out for 90 before they could come back. President Steinagel was great to work with and provided us with some loaners of his own, so we would always have 10 in Moldova. At any given time, there would be 5 who had been called to the Romania Bucuresti, now Moldova mission, and 10 who had been called to the Ukraine Kiev mission. Thankfully, I can report that the Moldovan visa restrictions have been modified, and they're now able to obtain one-year renewable visas. So the young men who are called as Russian-speaking missionaries to Moldova are now able to spend their entire missionary service in that country. Now, subsequent developments bore witness to me about why I had that impression that we needed to bring Russian-speaking elders in there. We sent the first 2 Russian-speaking elders to Bolts in August of 2009. It was Elder Mac Drzajich, who was serving in the Ukraine Kiev mission. He was the senior trainer, and Elder Jared Smith, fresh out of the MTC, and the 2 of them went to Bolts, where they began working. And we had heard there were a few members there, but very few. And they began working with them. They met with the members that were there in a small apartment owned by a faithful senior sister, Anna Perlia. It was very small. We had attendance of maybe 4 or 5 or 6 on a given Sunday. But 2 transfers later, we were able to send 2 more elders there, and the work began to progress with those faithful elders and the saints who were there. And I can report to you now that Bolts is now an independent branch of the church, no longer part of Warhead. That in the first quarter of 2013, the attendance at sacrament meeting in Bolts is 40 members. So we've had great success there with the help of the Lord and the faith of those missionaries who serve. There's still a lot of work to do in Moldova. The economic conditions there are challenging. With the help of the Lord, though, the church has established there and is growing. Approval's been given for the construction of a chapel in Chisinau. And although locating a suitable building site has been a bit of a challenge, we're confident that they will soon have a chapel there. So let me turn then to Romania for a few minutes. To commemorate the 20th anniversary of the dedicatory prayer that Elder Nelson offered in Cismigiu Gardens, on February 9th, 2010, members of the church gathered in snow-covered, and it was cold, Cismigiu Park, the same location where Elder Nelson offered the dedicatory prayer. After an opening hymn, President Doru, the district president, read the dedicatory prayer again, this time in Romanian. And later, following that, members and missionaries who were there split up and passed out 20 copies of the Book of Mormon, kind of symbolic with the 20th anniversary of the dedication, to people there in the park. And I thought often during our service about the dedicatory prayer. We read it often. With each group of arriving and departing missionaries, we read the dedicatory prayer. And I've reflected repeatedly on Elder Nelson's prophecy, and I'm quoting from the prayer. In all frenzied parts of the world, fraught with random motion of aimless existence, so often devoid of meaningful faith, let Romania be different. Let this nation become a great citadel of spiritual strength and a beacon of light to neighboring nations. Let the message of the restored gospel of thy beloved Son be welcome here. Close quote. Brothers and sisters, we've made a great start there. Only one member from Romania, Nicolae Chirdia, was present when Elder Nelson offered that dedicatory prayer. Now there are over 2,000 members of the church in Romania. But there's more to do, lots more, to bring about the fulfillment of that prophecy, that Romania will become a fortress of spiritual strength and a beacon to the neighboring nations. The prophecy will be fulfilled. Of that I'm sure. We read in Genesis, is anything too hard for the Lord? And Moroni reminds us, have miracles ceased? Behold, I say unto you, nay, neither have angels ceased to minister unto the children of men. It's my testimony that these things are true, that God is a God of miracles. Alma, speaking to the people of Ammonihah, stated, for behold, angels are declaring it unto many at this time in our land, and this is for the purpose of preparing the hearts of the children of men to receive his word. I believe the same thing is true now. The hearts of people all over the world, including those in Romania and the Republic of Moldova, are being prepared to receive the gospel. So for those of us who have been blessed with the opportunity to serve there and preach the gospel, and for others who share our love of the gospel and of God's children living in that part of the world, what now? Elder Nelson's prophecy will be fulfilled. What can we do to be a part of it? Now the word finished with our full-time formal service. What responsibility do we bear in bringing that prophecy to fruition? I'd invite each of us to ponder on that, to pray about it. I'm sure the answer may be different for each one. By way of illustration, let me just close by sharing with you the experience of one wonderful senior couple who recently served in Romania. Elder and Sister Van Wagener served in 2010 and 2011. I was prompted to send them to the city of Galatz. They asked me as they embarked upon their service what goals I had for them. I was impressed to tell them that we needed a more desirable meeting place and that we needed a new priesthood leader with leadership potential, a new convert to help build and strengthen that branch. I thought the first goal was possible, and I felt that with the help of the Lord, the second one was too. And the Van Wageners embraced the city of Galatz. Rather than searching out a new meeting site, as I had anticipated, Elder Van Wagener befriended the landlord and prevailed upon him to renovate our existing meeting house. When asked by the landlord what was needed, Elder Van Wagener showed him pictures of our two chapels in Bucharest. And he also told him, when he visited the landlord's office and saw the nice quality of finish there, he said, we'd like our chapel, our meeting home place, to be of the same quality as your office. To the surprise of probably everyone except the Van Wageners, the landlord agreed. He went so far as to ask, based upon the pictures that he had seen of the chapels, where we wanted the steeple. Now, there's not a steeple on the meeting house in Galatz, but it would have been possible. By the time the Van Wageners finished their service in Galatz, we had there one of the nicest villas in the mission. But that's not the end of the story. As I indicated, the Van Wageners embraced the city of Galatz. They sought out businessmen and women. They taught English and they taught social dance. Sister Van Wagener is an accomplished artist, and she held an art show in the premier gallery there in Galatz. Wherever they went, they offered to share the gospel, looking for that new priesthood leader that needed to join the church. When they completed their term of service, they returned home, but they did not cease their efforts. They remained in contact with their acquaintances there. And this past spring, I got a telephone call from the Van Wageners who said to me, President, we think the second goal is within reach. We're going back to Galatz at the end of May. Our acquaintance there, who's the director of one of the museums in town, has agreed to be baptized. And at his request, Elder Van Wagener returned, along with Sister Van Wagener, for that baptism. To baptize the baptism of someone that we hope will be a future leader in Galatz. Brothers and sisters, missionary work is the work of the Lord. My prayer is that each of us will seek and act upon the guidance of the Spirit in aiding in that work, in Romania, in the Republic of Moldova, in our neighborhoods, in our homes. And I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
In July of 2005, after having spent 4 years living in Moscow, Russia, Sister Orton and I, on our way home, went through Chisinau, Moldova, and through Romania. As we flew into the airport at Bucharest, Autopen, I looked out the window and I commented to Joy, "This is exhilarating." And it was. I had such fond memories of our time in Romania and Moldova, and it was all coming back as we flew into Autopen, and I couldn't push it out of my mind and heart. I've been asked to speak primarily about the new approach to missionary work, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it. I rarely give the talk I prepare, and I hope that I will be excused for that. Let me first comment on our call to serve and on the way God blesses his people And I'd like to illustrate that in 2 or 3 ways. And then I'd like to conclude, I think, with what I think the future of the church is in the Romania Moldova mission and what it will take to make that happen. In December of 1995, Joy and I were invited to go to the office of President Thomas S. Monson. After he spoke to us for some 40 minutes, he said, "Brother Orton, we'd like to call you to be a mission president. It will not be a French-speaking mission," knowing that I had served as a young man in the French mission. He said, "We call you to preside over the Romania Bucurest Mission." And I looked at Joy, and she looked at me, and I thought, where is Romania? What language do they speak? But within a matter of seconds, I had an electrifying feeling go from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. And I'm not sure I immediately understood it, but I soon came to understand that it was a reflection on the correctness of my call, but primarily on my love for the Romanian people, whom I had never met. Don't remember ever having met a Romanian prior to that time. A few years later, when we participated in the opening of the country of Moldova, I had the same kind of experience. A deep love for the Moldovan people. And I don't know how to explain that, other than the fact that the Lord is in charge and He put those feelings into my mind and heart. And they were certainly fulfilled when I visited those countries. Now, in exercising His power, His omnipotent power, Christ blesses His children in ways that He chooses, in His own due time and place, and in accordance with the faith and the efforts of His children. And I hope you'll keep that in mind during the remainder of my remarks. This is the Church of Jesus Christ. And He is in charge. And He can do whatever He desires to do, but we need to exercise faith and effort in order to invite Him to do it. When we arrived in Romania and met with President and Sister Mori, who were just delightful, and who received us with open arms, although I knew that they were regretting their departure. Isn't that true, President Mori? I remember after 2 or 3 hours with them, we went to the train station, and they were late for their train. And so the missionaries, I believe Elder Fowler and Elder Chandler, picked up their suitcases, and they and President and Sister Mori ran down the ramp and were able to get on their train. Well, I immediately returned to the mission office, and I didn't really know what was awaiting me other than the fact that there was a zone leader conference going on. And I didn't know anything about a zone leader conference, and I didn't know what my role would be. And I walked into the room, and the missionaries all looked up at me like, "What are you doing here?" And I felt like what am I doing here? But immediately that changed. That the missionaries were so well prepared and so wonderfully faithful and so capable and competent and well prepared, I think by Brother President and Sister Mori, that all fear left and we had a wonderful meeting. And so I learned immediately not only to love the members, but to love and respect the missionaries. Now, President Mori was gracious enough to have participated in the extension of the mission for his two assistants, Elders Fowler and Crandall. And so they were with us for a month or two after we arrived. And we embarked immediately on visiting cities around the mission. I believe that Presidents Noonschwaner and Wild and Mori were called to open that area and to, in effect, commence the establishment of the church there. And it quickly became apparent to me that my role, with the help of the missionaries and the members, was to oversee an expansion of the mission. And during our term, 11 new cities and a new country, the country of Moldova, were open to missionary work. And I could take 24 hours talking about the miracle of Moldova. But I won't do it. But much of it would be the same as you've heard about the opening of Romania. Miracle after miracle occurred. And it was obvious that the Lord was in charge and that I was simply his left arm. And I think President Didier felt the same way as we worked together with respect to the opening of Moldova. Now, let me depart just a moment from my train of thought. The last day we were in Bucharest, Octavian Vasilescu and I met with the Minister of Justice, whom I had come to know. And he asked if I would be willing to serve as the honorary consul for Romania to the state of Utah. And I have occupied that position since. Just briefly, I'd like to mention 3 events that have occurred in recent years. In February of 2010, Ambassador and Mrs. Vioritsa, U.S. Ambassador and his wife, visited Provo and Salt Lake City. And among other things, we visited the governor and we visited the first presidency of the church, who were so gracious in receiving us. And the last thing I remember Ambassador Vioritsa telling the first presidency is, "Your missionaries are the best ambassadors we have." And tears rolled down his cheeks as he said that. And he was sincere about it. The other thing he said, after visiting the Family History Museum, was, "I am going to immediately recommend to my government that they permit the microfilming of all Romanian records." Now, I don't know how far that has gone. Slowly, yes. But I think maybe it may be well to contact Ambassador Vioritsa again and remind him of how he felt at that time and what he did. In August of 2011, a group of 35 high school students from Cluj-Napoca visited Salt Lake City and Bountiful. It was a dance singing group, and we attended a reception for them, and like people from Armenia, France, Italy, Bulgaria, Australia, Israel, Indonesia, and Bulgaria. And a couple of days later, we were in attendance at a concert where all of these young high school students performed. And I think Sister Orton will agree with me that the Romanians far outshone all of the other people. We literally stood and raised our hands as they performed. They were so good. In March of 2012, UN ambassador from Romania to the United States, the United Nations, Simone Mirela Miculescu, visited Provo and Salt Lake City. Among other things, she visited and observed the BYU folk dancers. And as they performed, we noticed her feet going up and down and moving around on her seat. And after they performed a certain number, she stood up and said, "No, that really isn't Cluj-Napoca, this is Cluj-Napoca." And then she proceeded to do a dance. and the students just gaped at her in amazement, and we did also. She was such an intelligent, bright, well-organized person. After we visited with President Packer and can't remember who else was there. Anyway, a couple of days later, after we had visited with President Packer, I ran into him at a funeral, and we spoke briefly, and he said, "That is one talented woman." He remembered her well. Well, I say that because these folks in Romania and Moldova are no fools. They are very capable, well organized, and I don't know how efficient they are, but they're capable, and great things can happen through them. Now, let me just comment briefly on the evolution of missionary work. When I was a missionary in France 54 years ago, I think, 54 years ago, the only way we knew how to do missionary work was to knock on doors and use flannel boards with stick figures. And during vacation time, we went through building after building, knocking on every door, and in France, vacation time means everyone goes to the ocean or the sea. But we did missionary work. We knocked on doors, and every couple of hours, someone would be home. Well, that's the way we did missionary work. When we arrived in Bucharest, the primary means of doing missionary work, as we observed, was door knocking, block knocking, and some street contacting. And that was going reasonably well. But during our time there, some very astute and bright young missionaries devised a means of proselyting called the Power Hour. And by the Power Hour, they went out onto the street about 2 hours a day and reasoned that if we can go out with full faith and confidence and enthusiasm, we can accomplish more in 1 or 2 hours than we have been doing in a whole day. But with the rest of our time, we'll work through members and try to activate people who have fallen away. And that worked. And at the time, President Hinckley challenged all the missions to double the number of their baptisms. The Power Hour was really going. and member missionary work was going. And during our last 3 months, the missionaries doubled the number of their baptisms. The average over the past few years, it was doubled. And so that was a great stride forward in doing missionary work in Romania. And then as the evolution continued, Preach My Gospel came. And whereas prior to that time, missionary discussions were a little bit canned, now the missionaries were encouraged to teach that which people needed at the time and to do it using their own words and their own talents. Now, the internet and the use of church buildings is coming into play. It's probably a good thing that I'm not a mission president now, because I don't understand the internet all that well. But I understand church buildings and how church buildings can be used to bring people in and introduce them to the church and church buildings, and by use of the internet. Well, finally, what is the future of the church in the Romania Moldova mission? Now, I may be speaking out of turn, but here's how I view it. I believe that over the years of the existence of the Romania Bucurest and Romania Moldova missions, that people leave the area about as quickly and in almost equal numbers as people are baptized. Now, I may be wrong, but I think there's some truth to that. And so how do we avoid that? How are we going to have a stake in Romania or in Moldova? How are we going to have more chapels? How are we going to get a temple in that mission? I remember members saying, we want to have a temple here. We don't want to go to Freiburg or elsewhere. And they weren't very happy when the Kiev temple was announced, because that was communist territory. And so eyes rolled back into heads as that was announced. Well, one lesson I have learned from being the honorary consul for Romania to the state of Utah is that sometimes there's an attitude, and I'm speaking of government leaders, of I want to receive, but I don't want to give. And I don't know how pervasive that is among the people in general. But I believe that this generation and coming generations have to adopt the attitude, I'm going to give something in order to receive. In the law we say, quid pro quo, something for something. And so I think that's what has to happen. Now, I'm going to tell you one story, and I know my time is probably gone. While we were serving in Moscow, I received a telephone call one day from Isabella Tsikala from Oradea. And she said, President Orton, I've just concluded my mission at Temple Square, and I would like to have you help me get a visa to the United States and to gain entrance to Brigham Young University. And I had helped people do that before. I perhaps regretted it after I had done that. But I had, with the understanding that after they came to Utah and gained an education, they would return to Romania and help establish the church. Well, I said something that I don't know where it came from to Isabella. I said, Isabella, I would like to help you, but I think I can help you in a better way. I think you should stay in Oradea and complete your education. And I promised her that something good would happen in her life. Well, she called me back a few days later and said, I've decided to do what you have suggested I do. And so she stayed in Oradea. She completed her college education. And on a trip to Bucharest, she met Florin Jambashu. And after a few months, they were married. And Florin moved to Oradea and became the branch president, and Isabella was the Relief Society president. Now, I didn't know until you announced it today that Florin is now the Oradea District president. Well, I think we have to have more Isabellas in order for the church really to grow and for us to have a stake and chapels and a temple in that part of the world. And so I guess my challenge is, well, can you imagine all of us going to Bucharest next week and having a meeting there with all the members who are currently there? And can you imagine what would happen if we, and I'm speaking primarily to members, if we were to stay there and help establish the church? We would have 5,000 members, maybe 10,000 members, if that would happen. Now, I understand why you come to America. You come, you get an education, the economy is good. You meet someone, you get married, you have children, you're happy. And I understand that. But I think that if the church is really going to be what it should be and become, that we have to sacrifice. And I say this to you because I love you. And I love the members of the church in Romania and Moldova. And I love the people. And I love these ambassadors and these government leaders with whom I've met. After Ambassador Viorița's visit to Utah, I was invited to Washington, D.C. to attend some meetings with other honorary consuls and the ambassadors and the ambassador. And during a reception before a dinner one night, the ambassador took me by one arm and Mrs. Viorița took me by the other arm, and they led me up to the liquor table, and they picked up a bottle of water and handed it to me and said, "We knew this is what you would want." Well, the church is known. The church is known, and I think wonderful things can happen. Not that they haven't happened, but they can happen to a much greater extent. Brothers and sisters, I know that God lives. And I know that Jesus Christ is the Savior and Redeemer of the world. And I know that this is His church. And I know that it was difficult for the early church members here in America after the church was restored. And I know it took time to have chapels and temples and for the membership to grow. But it happened. And God was with them. And He'll be with us as we seek to make that happen in the Romania Moldova mission. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
recunoștință și dragoste pentru Tine. Doamne, îți suntem recunoscători pentru această șansă care noi am avut-o astăzi, ca să ne întâlnim aici, ca Sfinței zilelor de urmă și să sărbătorim stabilirea Bisericii Tale în România și Moldova. Doamne, îți suntem recunoscători pentru Fiul Tău prea iubit, Iisus Hristos, și pentru sacrificiul făcut de El, pentru că noi avem șansa ca să ne întoarcem din nou la Tine. Doamne, îți suntem recunoscători pentru vorbitorii de astăzi și pentru mesajele care le-am auzit, pentru cunoștința care am primit-o. Doamne, suntem foarte recunoscători pentru familiile noastre și pentru nenumăratele binecuvântări care noi le primim zilnic în viețile noastre. Astăzi, Doamne, vrem să-ți mulțumim în special pentru acei misionari care au slujit și care slujesc în România și Moldova. Doamne, noi Te iubim foarte mult și noi știm că prin Tine totul e posibil. Te rugăm ca Tu să binecuvântezi lucrătorii de la arhive de România și Moldova, să le înmoie inimile în lor, ca să fie mai ușor pentru membrii bisericii să aibă acces la informații despre strămoșii noștri. și ca noi să putem îndeplini munca Ta aici pe pământ. Doamne, noi Te rugăm ca Tu să binecuvântezi biserica Ta în întreaga lume. Te rugăm ca Tu să binecuvântezi în special în acele țări în care, din o pricină oarecare, nu este posibil ca biserica să fie restaurată. Te rugăm, Doamne, ca Tu să binecuvântezi munca Ta aici pe pământ. Te rugăm ca Tu să binecuvântezi această întâlnire, această seară și întâlnire de mâine, ca noi să vizităm cu prieteni și cu persoane care nu le cunoaștem încă, dar avem mult în comun. Te rugăm ca Tu să ne binecuvântezi, ca noi să avem un timp plăcut și, Doamne, ajută-ne ca noi să fim exemple bune pentru cei din jurul nostru. Ajută-ne ca să avem dorința de a sluji celor din jur. Doamne, te rugăm în special să binecuvântezi membrii de la Moldova și de la România cu credință, putere și dragoste. Te rugăm ca Tu să ne binecuvântezi pe fiecare de noi individual și pe familiile noastre. Doamne, noi Te iubim foarte mult și Îți suntem recunoscători pentru tot. Și aceste lucruri Te rugăm în numele Fiului Tău prea iubit, Iisus Hristos. Amin.